Hello everyone, and welcome to the Mancini, the Amazing channel, and today we are kinda quirky. That's right, I am here in the BBL, so that is an Uber's Draft League that I do believe I've got some content from previous seasons of this league in advance. I'm in the Type Null division, and honestly, just sort of jamming. This is actually a league I've run a few different monotype runs before, and I figured I'd go with like a combo monotype sort of run here from the kind of quirky. It's the Kanga Bangas, one of my the absolute classic logos with the bunny snags with the Mega Kangaskhan on it. But yeah, here we are. It's actually the first time I've used a number of these Generation 9 Pokemon, and actually, funnily enough, one of the Pokemon from Generation 8. It's also the first time that I've used. So it's singles, it's national deck, so that means that a lot of my Pokemon who are not from Generation 9 have access to Toxic, and like Pursuit is legal, so I picked up a Pokemon specifically so it had Pursuit and stuff there, but this is it's only Pokemon that are electric type or that have the ability Quark Drive, so the Iron Mons. So it's not exactly a monotype thing, but it's very much on that monotype theme. And it is actually really interesting. There's actually only one, so Arceus is banned in this league, so that meant that there's only one Uber with an electric type. So that means there are going to be a lot of other people in the league who have 3, even 4 Ubers, while I'm here with just the one, and also it's going to have overlapping offenses with a lot of the other Pokemon on my team. So that's definitely something interesting to try and work around. Not going to be as bad as if I'd actually gone mono-electric, but definitely still its own challenge there. So, round 1, Zekrom, the Iron Turbine. What I've gone with for all the nicknames is all the Pokemon that do not have the ability Quark Drive, I've called them Iron Blank, and then for all the Pokemon with the ability Quark Drive, I've tried to give them like a past Paradox Mon style nickname. So here we have the Iron Turbine, Zekrom. This generation it got access to Stealth Rock, it's got Mold Breaker, which means it can set rocks up against Magic Bounce Pokemon, but sort of the main thing it has is it's got this incredibly powerful Bolt Strike, which I believe is 130 base power, 85 accuracy, electric type move, which can be boosted by electric terrain. It also has access to Scale Shot, which with loaded dice is a minimum 100 base power dragon type move. Combine that with Dragon Dance, and it has the ability to be a really threatening sweeper, and it can also break decently in the mid game. It does also have access to Hone Claws, which can increase the accuracy on both that Scale Shot and that Bolt Strike. It has some coverage, though none of it is amazing. And it does also have access to Defog, which means that it's a Pokemon that, because it can threaten out a lot of opposing Pokemon with its strong Dragon type moves, and the fact that it has a good defensive typing that it can often try and set up with, it can use that to get some hazard control back, like I said, with Rocks or Defog. So definitely a Mon that I am very excited here to use today. 90 speed is definitely awkward, and the fact that this is the only the only Dragon type, the only Electric type Uber, I'm glad I got one. I wouldn't have gone for the Mono Electric obviously if I had not gotten Zekrom, but yeah, definitely something which is going to be interesting and something that is going to be one upcoming basically every game as my own Uber. Definitely every game. Not as much I think as the next Pokemon that we'll be looking at, but definitely a consistent option. So, Pokemon on the thumbnail, the Quarky Man themselves, the Iron Galewing Tapu Koko. So for those of you who have only played Generation 9, Tapu Koko has the ability Electric Surge. It sets up electric terrain for 5 turns, and that boosts the power of electric moves by 1.3x, as well as making it so sleep moves fail on grounded Pokemon, and Pokemon that are not named Tapu Koko, and basically none from Generation 9 either, so Pokemon from Generation 8 and back that are also electric type, Pokemon that were in Generation 8 have access to Rising Voltage, which is a move that I think becomes 140 base power if it hits a Pokemon that's grounded in electric terrain, as well as being boosted if the user is also in electric terrain. So, that's kind of nice here. Koko has a high attack stat at 115, not actually high, but like higher than its special attack at 95, but it doesn't have access to Play Rough, so it's mostly using Thunderbolt and Dazzling Gleam. Also no Moonblast. It's not a Pokemon that's known for its consistent non-electric type damage, which, obviously it's not a great thing when you are running a mono-electric type team, but getting the terrain is kind of important. And yeah, its damage isn't amazing, but it is a very solid pivot. 130 speed meant that it used to be one of the faster Pokemon in the game. Unfortunately, it is no longer the 2010s, so that's not anywhere near as true as it was at that point. But very strong. It does also have access to defog, and the fact that it has Toxic along with Roost, it's got dual screens. There's a lot of ways that it can support a team effectively outside of just setting electric terrain, which obviously electric terrain is also good for all my Iron Mons. Now, as I was picking up Tapu Koko, all of the Iron Mons I wanted went. So Iron Bundle and a bunch of Rotoms went, and Iron Boulder went. I think there was another Iron Mon that went. And I was like, okay, well, this is mildly annoying. I was really hoping to pick up Iron Bundle. I think it would have added a lot of depth to my team, and there were very few water-type options, especially because Rotomosh and Iron Bundle both went between somewhere in my, like, the first 3 rounds. So I believe both before my round 3 pick. So with my round 3 pick, I wound up going here for the Corrosive Lumen, the Iron Moth. It was, I believe, the fastest Iron Mon that was left because Boulder and Bundle had both gone, and it, with its Poison and Fire typing and the Quark Drive boost, especially if you can get that into special attack and not speed, though the flexibility is nice either way, is incredibly strong. The fact that it only has Sludge Wave means that even though in VGC that is a real issue, it's slightly stronger than Sludge Bomb in singles, and it can do a significant amount of damage. It really is a Pokemon. It's got Toxic Spikes as well, and it can absorb Toxic Spikes. Always nice to have a grounded poison, but it really is a Pokemon that can threaten a lot of the fairies that otherwise would be a challenge for Zekrom. It is also one of my Terra Captains, so I have 2 Terra Captains there to not be Ubers, and this was the one that I thought was sort of the most important on a mono electric type team. Well, not exactly, but you know, on a team featuring many electric types, I really wanted to give one of my non-electric type Pokemon the ability to lose their ground weakness, because I did want to fire, I did want to poison, you know. And not having to maintain that electric type weakness will be nice. Even if that ground type weakness, sorry, will be nice. And its damage is always nice when it does more damage, because more damage is more good. This is mostly a Pokemon that is used, I think, to break teams or to clean them in the late game. But it is definitely a mon that seems like it will be a lot more fun to use in singles than it has when I've been assisting people using it in VGC. And it's Pokemon I'm very excited to use because I haven't actually had the opportunity to use it before, unlike Zekrom and Koko. And yeah, Corrosive Lumen, so because it's, you know, that poisonous thing of light, and you know, moths always go towards the flame, and this time the moth has itself ascended and become the lamp. And here we are with Iron Leaves, the Verdant Storm. So I really wanted to get ground resists, because it turns out that when you have a bunch of Pokemon that are weak to ground, not dying to ground moves helps. Doesn't win games, but it helps. So Iron Leaves in singles also seems significantly better than in VGC, though still not amazing. It seems like you have to put a lot into it to get stuff out of it. It does have access to a signature move, Psyblade, which is a psychic type move that goes to 120 base power when you're in electric terrain, and that can also give you an attack boost from the electric terrain. After a Swords Dance, that's doing a lot of damage. Without a Swords Dance, especially without a Swords Dance and electric terrain up, this Pokemon is somewhat flawed because it's using Leaf Blade at 90 base power and then Psyblade at 80 base power, as well as often Close Combat or Sacred Sword for coverage, both of which are decent options. It's still a bit of a challenge, but it is a ground resist, and it is a Pokemon that can switch in after a Koko or some such and threaten stuff with Psyblade, which is nice. It's nice getting a depth there, and Grass is good at threatening ground types, which obviously are themselves spooky, even though in Ubers a lot of times the grounds have secondary typings that may not necessarily leave them weak to Grass. Looking at you, Zygarde complete. But yeah, so here's the Verdant Storm. And yeah, the Verdant Storm, I was reading through the dex entries for Iron Leaves because I could not figure out what I wanted to call it, and apparently it's sort of like a storm or something. They definitely gave some impression of. I also have not used Iron Leaves before. I just have had it used against me and have not been super impressed. But it'll be interesting to draft it and see how it performs in single, especially with that electric terrain support. What does it say? No idea. It says, according to the few eyewitness accounts that exist, it uses shining blades to julienne large trees and boulders. No idea. I read something at some point which made me think the storm made sense. Oh well. But yeah, so here we are with another Ironmon. All my Ironmons I sort of did in a row. This one's a ground immunity this time, but another ground type check. Unfortunately, another fairy weakness. I will really have to grapple with how I'm dealing with fairies in general. But yeah, the dirigible trident here, no defog, but it is a decent pivot. It does have pretty solid special attack. It allows me to deal a lot of damage in like categories I may not necessarily have been able to otherwise. And it is a Pokemon I really like using. Knockoff is also just a fun move, even though a lot more Pokemon do have knockoff in that dex than they do just in Generation 9. And I'm sort of hoping to see how it performs. It'll be interesting to use a Cork Drive Mon in singles where you actually do tend to get electric terrain up. That isn't grounded. I did consider tearing Iron Leaves, I did consider tearing Iron Jugulus. I wound up deciding against both of them. I feel like I'm just going to want to use their base types as effectively as possible. So that was, what I wound up doing. Jugulus is really mostly just here because it can take hits reasonably well and it can dish out some reasonable damage. It can dish out that damage especially well if it does have that Quark Drive boost. I thought it would be interesting to see how it performs. Also, not too many ground immunities. The other options, there's like Thunty and such, but like getting a Ghost check would also be difficult. And Ghost is a strong type. Dark is also a strong type in Ubers, but I do at least have Coco there. So definitely interesting. And it means, like if I'm, I can check Crocodile with this instead of Coco, So here we are with Vikavolt, the Iron, and Dirigible Trident, because it's a jet and there's 3 of them. I couldn't really come up with a good second word here, though I had a few decent, like a workshop to a wide range of names. The Iron Mandible, Vikavolt. This is a Pokemon that I absolutely love using. It's got access to Sticky Web. It has Levitate as well, so it is another ground immunity. It is like just really strong. Bug Buzz is able to go through substitutes. Volt Switch is good. It's also slow, so I can potentially use it to counter some of the like Trick Roomy sort of Pokemon. It's very consistently getting a slow Volt Switch off. If it gets a Volt Switch off, obviously against a ground team, that is what it is. But a lot of ground types don't actually take Bug Buzz particularly well, which is nice. No one's ever heard of a Great Tusk, it's not real. And this Pokemon does also have grass coverage, which is nice for some of the Pokemon that can otherwise check its stabs. It's not going to check like a Thunty, but it is otherwise going to be doing some pretty solid damage all around, and it is honestly just a really fun Pokemon to use. One of the Pokemon I used to use all of the time back in Generation 7, and a decent bit in Generation 8 when I was playing singles. And in Generation 7, I don't think it even had Sticky Web yet, so it is really just a mon I like using. Now we're here to the Iron Beacon, Lantern. Lantern is also a Pokemon I used to use an inordinate amount of time. It was one of the cheapest Pokemon on the team, one of the very few water types available. It has a water immunity as well, which is nice. So I can actually switch into like the Scald Ice Beam combination with Iron Beacon. In singles draft, it often feels really important to get a Pokemon that can switch into Scald. And considering that my 2 other water resists at this point, Iron Leaves and Zekrom, are both physical attackers who don't like getting burned, it definitely felt imperative, even if I am threatening most water types with the electric type moves. Obviously, if they have access to Terastallization, that could become more complicated or challenging, or if they have a secondary typing that otherwise ameliorates that concern. So yeah, the Iron Beacon is here. It's got access to Heal Bell, which is a decent support move, but mostly it's here itself to throw out Scald, Volt Switch. It's got access to Signal Beam, and it has Ice Beam as well, which means it can punish some of the dragon types that do resist the broader electric stab, though not incredibly well because it doesn't have high special attack, but it is quite tanky, and I honestly just have classically really enjoyed using it, so I'm happy to have it back on the team. Now onto our next Pokemon, the Iron Sponge. This is the Generation 8 Pokemon that I had not drafted before. It also has access to Electric Surge to set up terrain for my Cork Drive Pokemon to give them that stat boost. It has really weird stat spread and move pool, so it's really slow. It's got really bad HP. It's got mediocre offenses, or not mediocre, like this, like I think it's like 99, 100 or whatever. It's got okay defenses. And yeah, I don't know what you're generally supposed to do with that outside of sending toxic spikes and being able to set up electric terrain in extra time. but it's a cool Pokemon, and I think it's something where, because this team may find itself reliant on electric terrain or really appreciating electric terrain in some of its compositions, having a second electric terrain setter would be nice. And honestly, having another Pokemon with access to Spikes and Toxic Spikes doesn't feel like something I'd kick out of bed too quickly. You do appreciate just being able to get more damage in general. And it's the Iron Sponge. Who doesn't love the Iron Sponge? So we go on to the penultimate no, not the penultimate. Oh my gosh, just left 3 more. There's 12 Pokemon in this team. The draft breakdown I had on Monday was 9 Pokemon. I picked up Zebstrika because it was cheap, and it's one of very few electric types that have access to Pursuit. So if there's a matchup where I'm playing against, say, Lunala, or actually, I don't even know if Lunala's legal, the Dawnwing's Necrozma, even potentially Ultra Necrozma, and I'm just like, okay, my main way to remove a really valuable piece on their board is slapping a Zebstrika, possibly even a Scarf Zebstrika on a team, and clicking Pursuit. And that's fine. It does get access to Supercell Slam now, which is cool, so it actually does more damage than it classically did on the physical side with Wild Charge, and that is an improvement. Broadly, it has access to Toxic as well, which is it's got a bunch of reasonably okay moves. It's not generally particularly good, but it is a low tier option, and I thought it would be funny to pick Zebstrika up just so I had Pokemon with access to Pursuit. Alright, then we get to the penultimate Pokemon, and my other Terra Abuser, the Iron Kahuna Raichu. Now, many people may not know this, but it has this ability Surge Surfer, which doubles its speed in electric terrain. So if you thought that my team was fast before, this is a Pokemon, like the only faster Pokemon on turn 1 of a game, I believe, is Whimsicott in Sun. And with Terastallization, I should hopefully be able to get like a nasty plot off and be able to clean through a lot of teams, and get that coverage move, whatever is the most important for a given matchup. So Rising Voltage, Psychic Psyshock depending on matchup, and then either a Terra Blast, or if there's another coverage move that already has that move, should hopefully be able to late game some teams. It is honestly just a Pokemon that I really love Alolan Raichu. If you guys remember, I think I've used it in A to Z once or twice on teams where it makes absolutely no sense to have picked Alolan Raichu as my fake out user, just because it's a Pokemon that's fun to use, and it's honestly just cool. I like the guy. I like the little fella. Who doesn't like a little fella? So yeah, very excited to have the Iron Kahuna here on the team, and then the final Pokemon, the Iron Sediment, Sandy Shocks. So I realized like 4 rounds ago or something that basically no one else could afford this, and I think 1 or 2 teams that could already had ground types, so I could sort of wait on it. This gives me access to another Spiker. It's Pokemon that I've been addicted to using because it's really fun. I was still in VBL at the time this was drafting, so definitely a mod that I am keen and excited to have picked up. Sandy Shocks is honestly, he's just cool. He looks cool. He has fun. It's probably not going to have the same sort of set diversity that Iron Sediment had, but it is honestly just a really fun Pokemon to use with access to those spikes and those rocks, and access to, in a given matchup, I'll run into like an Excadrill or something. You know what? I'm going to bust out the Body Press, and just having a special ground type feels nice as well, especially when your physical ground type is not a very strong one in the situation of Iron Treads. So yeah, definitely keen. Oh, also I didn't mention Iron Treads has access to Rapid Spin, which is very good in singles. Sorry, do I not have Iron Treads? Am I going crazy? No, okay, I accidentally skipped past this slide really early on. The Petrified Stallion, Iron Treads. Yeah, I did think it came early, but so yeah, somehow I accidentally missed this slide. Yeah, Iron Treads. This is a pretty important Pokemon on my team. It's Steel, so it's another Fairy Resist. It has access to Stealth Rock itself. It has Rapid Spin. Being a ground type, it's like a Rock Resist. I don't think I have any other Rock Resist on the team. No, Sandy Shocks is also a Rock Resist because I picked up another ground type, but I don't have a fighting type on the team. I could potentially have gotten Palmet, but I didn't like what it would be coming at the expense of. Access to Stealth Rock itself as well with Iron Treads, and it does give me a Pokemon that can click Earthquake, which is always nice. And if I need to reset a spinner, so say if I do have both Pincurchin and Koko on a team, and say the Koko's Boots and the Pincurchin's Terrain Extender, and I'm like, okay, I'm in a position I need to reset my terrain so that I can get the 8-turn terrain from Pincurchin and then clean with an Iron Moth or something. I can actually click an Ice Spinner to remove my own 5-turn terrain to be able to set up the 8-turn terrain, which I think is funny. May not be something I do consistently or really even get an opportunity to do, but the fact that Ice Spinner removes my terrain does mean that I have a little bit of an extra lever with strategy there. Ultimately, I think it was really fun BBL draft. I'm hoping to, maybe not make playoffs, but at least not relegate this season with this more gimmicky style team. Ubers is really just a format that I find really fun to play in singles. It just lets you specialize low tier mons into really specific matchups and let them pop off in a really interesting way. I really also like the fact that this is a league where you're allowed to run a 12-mon team on that 9 to 12 line, because 12-mon teams mean that there are more random low tier Pokemon that I can have that one crazy game. I remember there was like a season where I had a Bronzor that beat an opposing Arceus because they just did not run the coverage move for the Bronzor. So always fun. Being a team with a lot of Generation 8 and 9 Pokemon, Generation 9 especially, a lot of my Pokemon don't have access to Toxic, which isn't great, but all the Pokemon that do have access to Toxic, I feel nice having. Thank you everyone for watching. I hope that this, I have a good bit of fun this BBL season coming. And I'm honestly on holidays as I'm writing this, so we'll be seeing much, as this is coming out, so I won't be seeing much until sort of the day after when I come back. But I think I'll probably already have 1 or 2 games recorded to be coming out. And depending on when my next singles league is after this, I sort of expect to finish out this whole BBL season here, unlike WPF, where I'll sort of can that when VBL starts back up. But I don't know, if I go into BFR or if I don't feel like there's super much response on this, I may shift content at some point. But yeah, ultimately, thank you everyone for watching. I do think singles drafts, it may have a place with Ubers. And remember everyone that the main thing that you should strive to be in this life is kind to Quarky. Goodbye.